A simple Thanksgiving dinner at a small diner changes the life of a waitress named Emma. When Emma decides to spend her entire meager tip on buying a meal for an elderly homeless man, she learns that the last of Henry's Amazon's tips are meant to be offered to one more. And to the president of the American Meat Company, little did he know that this small act would reveal a great secret. The emaciated man turned out to have an unexpected identity that would make the whole world cry. But the miracle didn't stop there. A special gift of gratitude set Emma on a journey to help thousands of others, and it all started with an act of genuine kindness. Welcome to Kindness Stories, where small stories of kindness can make big miracles. Today, we will explore a touching story that started with a simple Thanksgiving dinner, but changed the lives of a waitress and a homeless man. You won't believe what happened next. Stay tuned. Miller's Diner sits unassumingly on the corner of a rundown street in the town of Midway. The town isn't famous or bustling, but it's home to ordinary people and untold stories. Miller's Diner is no different from the other places of this city, that the restaurant is complex and with a few plastic tables and dim neon lights where locals and the working poor frequent the area. Emma, 25, is one of the main servers at the restaurant. With her brown hair tied back in a tight bun and her large, bright but tired eyes, she often smiles to hide her worries. She works almost non-stop, waiting tables from morning to night, handing out plates of cheap but piping hot food. Despite the hardship, Emma always tries to be welcoming to everyone. The small tips from customers are her lifeblood: to pay the bill, buy medicine for her sick mother, and save for a rainy day. That afternoon, the weather was colder than usual. The late autumn winds had begun to carry a touch of winter, leaving the restaurant sparsely populated. Emma counted her small tip in her apron pocket, anxious about the week ahead. She sighed but smiled when the doorbell rang, a soft chime signaling a customer. The person who entered was a skinny old man wearing a tattered coat. He looked out of place in the warm space of the restaurant. His shoes were covered in mud. His gray hair was messy, and his face was worn down by the years of his life. The old man walked to a table in a secluded corner and sat down without ordering anything. Emma watched from a distance. She noticed that he didn't order a drink or flip through a menu like the other customers. His eyes stared out the window, where the evening shadows were slowly covering the town. Emma bit her lip, feeling a pang of indescribable sympathy. How many times had she encountered people like this, a shadow forgotten by society? But what bothered her most was that she couldn't do much for them, beyond a warm smile and a few polite greetings. She took a deep breath and approached the old man's table. "Hello, sir, can I get you anything?" Emma asked, trying to keep her voice light. The man looked up, his brown eyes dull with weariness and sadness. "I don't have any money, girl," he said, his voice hoarse. "I just came in here to get out of the cold. I'll be right back." Emma smiled gently. "It's okay. Just sit here. It's cold outside." She turned away, but his words echoed in her head. No money. The words stabbed her like a knife, reminding her of the hardships of life. Looking at the small amount of tip money in her pocket, Emma knew she didn't have much. But that thought was overshadowed by another, stronger thought. The thought of kindness. She remembered her mother saying, "Life may not be fair, but you can choose to be kind." Emma thought back to that quote and decided to do something for the old man. She went back to the kitchen and secretly ordered a special Thanksgiving meal: golden roasted turkey, mashed potatoes, and gravy bursting with flavor. It would be the warmest meal he could remember in years. In her heart, Emma knew the money could be used to buy more medicine for her mother or pay the utility bill. But today, something inside her said, sometimes kindness is worth more than money. She smiled, placing the meal in front of the man who was looking down. "Wishing you a warm Thanksgiving." The man looked up, stunned at the food in front of him, then looked at Emma. His eyes were glistening with tears. "Thank you," he said softly, his voice breaking. Emma responded with a gentle smile, But little did she know that this small action would change her life forever. After placing the Thanksgiving meal on the table, Emma quietly stepped back, trying not to embarrass the old man. From the corner of the counter, she glanced at the table where he was sitting. Henry, as Emma silently called him in her mind, sat motionless for a long time, his old eyes staring at the food in front of him, as if he couldn't believe it was real. After a moment, he slowly reached for his fork, shakily cut a piece of turkey, and brought it to his mouth. The dim yellow light in the diner seemed to warm as Henry began to eat. Emma noticed he was fighting back tears. This was probably the first Thanksgiving meal he had had in years on the streets. Emma felt her heart warm as she watched him eat. Despite losing a crucial tip, she had no regrets. Who would give their hard-earned money to a stranger like that? A voice rang out from behind the counter. It was Sam, the restaurant's chef. Sam was in his 40s, large and often gruff, but he was actually a kind man. He looked at Emma with a curious yet stern gaze. Emma shrugged, smiling slightly. "Sometimes a warm meal can be more important than money, Sam." Sam grunted, but a small smile tugged at the corners of his lips. He turned back to the kitchen and continued cooking, leaving Emma standing alone behind the counter, feeling relieved. A few other customers in the bar began to notice Emma's actions. An older woman sitting nearby smiled at her, then quietly pulled out her wallet and left a $10 bill on the table before leaving. A younger man nodded approvingly, his eyes filled with gratitude. No one said anything, but they knew they had just witnessed something beautiful. Kindness from the heart. Henry finished his dinner slowly, as if he wanted to savor each moment. When his plate was almost empty, he put down his fork and looked up at Emma, who was coming over to clear the table. "Thank you," he said, his voice hoarse but sincere. "You have done more than I deserve." Emma chuckled and shook her head. "You don't have to say that. Everyone deserves a decent meal, especially on Thanksgiving." Henry was silent for a moment, his eyes pensive as if reminiscing about something far away. "I used to have meals like this with my family." He hesitated, his voice dropping. "But I lost it all." Emma could feel the pain in Henry's words. She didn't ask any more, afraid that her questions would touch on old wounds, but Henry continued, as if he needed someone to listen. "I had a family, a good job, but then mistakes and losses took me away. I pushed myself into this darkness, and there was no way back." Emma sat down in the chair across from him, her hands clasped together, listening quietly. She didn't judge, didn't pity, she was simply there, so he could share. Henry looked at her, his eyes warm and grateful. "Thank you for treating someone like me with kindness. You're the first person to do that in years." Emma chuckled. "You're not who you think you are. Anyone can lose their way, but that doesn't mean they don't deserve kindness." Emma's words made Henry freeze. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slightly, his eyes shining with a small but hopeful light. After Henry left, Emma returned to her work. She didn't realize that the incident had been recorded by a customer in the restaurant on his phone and shared on social media with the following status: "A waitress used her tip to buy dinner for a homeless person on Thanksgiving. This kindness deserves to be shared." That evening, Emma counted her tip. Despite the large loss she had made on Henry's meal, the remaining coins did not make her feel disappointed. Instead, she felt a strange joy creeping into her heart. She told herself that no matter how hard it was, she would always choose kindness. Outside the diner, Henry stood for a long time under the dim streetlights. He looked at the Miller's Diner sign with deep eyes. An indescribable feeling rose within him, as if the meal had not only filled his stomach but also rekindled a long-lost flame of hope. Henry walked away, blending into the cold night of the town. Little did he know that meeting Emma would be the beginning of an unexpected chain of events, a story that would bring the whole world to tears. As for Emma, she continues her daily life, unaware of the future that awaits her. Miracles sometimes start from the smallest of actions, just a little kindness and a sincere heart. 3 days after Thanksgiving, Emma was still busy with the familiar rhythm of the small restaurant. She did not see the old man from the day before, Henry, return. Still, the image of his teary eyes as he ate dinner haunted her mind. Emma wondered where he was, if he was well, and if he had found some warm shelter in this cold winter. That afternoon, as Emma was cleaning the last table of her shift, the doorbell rang again. She looked up, ready to smile at the customer as usual, but stopped when she saw who had just entered. A middle-aged man, wearing a luxurious black suit, with a confident and serious appearance, was standing in the middle of the restaurant's entrance. His hair was neatly combed, his black shoes were shiny, as if they had just been polished. His appearance was so different from the usual customers at Miller's Diner. The atmosphere of the restaurant suddenly became strangely quiet. Emma put down her towel and approached. "Hello, how can I help you?" The man looked at her for a moment, his sharp eyes softening as they rested on Emma's friendly face. "Are you Emma?" Emma was a little surprised but nodded. "Yes, it's me. What's the matter?" The man smiled slightly and held out his hand to shake. "I am Richard Carrington. I came here to find you and thank you for your kindness to someone special to me." "Special person?" Emma frowned, trying to recall her memory. Richard nodded, his eyes growing warmer. "Henry, the homeless man you bought Thanksgiving dinner for." Emma's eyes widened in surprise. "You know Henry? Is he okay? I've been worried about him for the past few days." Richard looked at Emma with emotion, then took a deep breath, as if to calm himself. "Henry Carrington is my father." Emma was stunned. She couldn't believe what she had just heard. Henry, the skinny, homeless man she had helped, was the father of a man who looked as powerful and wealthy as Richard. Richard sat down and began to tell his story. "My father was a successful businessman. He ran a large company and had a happy family. But then a tragedy happened. My mother died in an accident, and he couldn't get over the pain. My father lost his way, the company collapsed, and he disappeared from our lives for almost 5 years." Emma listened to Richard's story with a sinking heart. She couldn't imagine that Henry, the homeless man sitting in front of her that day, had ever lived a completely different life. "We searched for him for years," Richard continued, his voice breaking, "but my father seemed to have lost faith in himself and in life. When I saw the picture of you and my father circulating on social media, I couldn't believe my eyes." Emma was stunned. "What picture?" Richard pulled out his phone and showed it to Emma. It was a photo of her placing the plate of food in front of Henry, her face full of concern and Henry's eyes filled with tears. The photo went viral, with thousands of comments and shares, along with the touching caption, "A Thanksgiving dinner, kindness can change a life." Emma stared at the photo with wide eyes. She had no idea that her small act would have such a huge impact. I just thought I had to do what I had to do. He needed a meal." Richard nodded, his eyes sparkling with emotion. "You didn't just give him a meal, you gave him faith in the goodness of people, in life. You helped him find his family." Having said that, Richard turned back to the door of the shop and signaled. Emma looked after him and was stunned when she saw Henry enter. He was no longer the haggard man with the tattered coat. He was dressed in simple but clean and neat clothes. His silver hair was combed back, and his face seemed to have regained its vitality. "Hello, Emma," Henry said, his voice shaking with emotion. "Do you recognize me?" Emma covered her mouth with her hand, tears welling up in her eyes, but she couldn't speak. She stepped forward and hugged Henry like a long-lost relative. "I'm glad you're safe and well," she choked out. Henry smiled, his eyes shining with joy. "Thank you, Emma. You have shown me that no matter the circumstances, there are still good people willing to help strangers. You have given me a meal, but more importantly, hope." The atmosphere in the restaurant froze. Some of the customers who witnessed the scene were in tears. Sam, from the kitchen, looked out and nodded, his eyes shining with pride for his little waitress. Emma let go of Henry and gave him a long look. "Are you going to be okay? Your family must be so happy to find you." Henry smiled, taking her hand. "Yes, I will be fine. But I will never forget what you did. You not only changed my life, but you inspired me to live." Henry looked at Richard, and the middle-aged man nodded in understanding. "Emma, my father has a plan he wants to share with you," Richard said. Emma looked at both of them with confusion and curiosity. Little did she know that this was just the beginning of an even greater miracle. Not long after their emotional encounter at Miller's Diner, Emma had just finished her shift and was cleaning up the place one Saturday afternoon when the doorbell rang again. It was Henry and Richard, with a few people following behind. They had cheerful but serious faces, and their appearance seemed to carry something important. "You're here again." Emma laughed at the sight of Henry, but then she realized that he looked different today. He looked healthier, dressed in a casual sweater and crisp brown slacks. Richard, standing next to him, held a thick file and gave him a knowing smile. "We have something important to tell you, Emma," Henry began, his voice gentle but serious. Emma put down the towel and turned to face them, her heart suddenly jumping. "What is it?" I don't think we did anything special to discuss." Henry looked at her gratefully, his eyes shining with deep emotion. "You may think the meal you gave me was a small thing, but it changed my entire life and my family's. You showed me that there is still goodness in this world, and you pulled me back into the light after so many years in the darkness." Emma blushed, embarrassed. "You don't have to thank me. I was just doing the right thing." Richard smiled, walked over to Emma, and placed the file on a nearby table. "Emma, you didn't just do the right thing. You did something extraordinary. And we want to reward you with a worthy gift." Emma frowned, her eyes shifting from Richard to Henry and then back to the thick stack of documents in front of her. "What do you mean?" Henry said softly, "I have discussed it with Richard and my family, and I want to set up a charity in your name, Emma Has Heart Foundation. This fund will be used to help homeless people, people who are in trouble, just like I was. From your kindness, I want to extend that hand everywhere, so that thousands of others can receive the same hope and kindness that I received from you." Emma was stunned, her eyes widened, unable to believe her ears. "The charity named after me?" Richard nodded, smiling proudly. "Exactly. Your kindness has been contagious. Your story has inspired many people. That's why we decided to turn your small act of kindness into something even bigger. My father spent all of his remaining savings to start this foundation, and our family will continue to support it." Emma looked at Henry, tears welling up in her eyes. "You didn't have to do that. I didn't do anything that big." Henry smiled gently, taking her hand. "You have done more than you think. The meal you bought for me not only filled my stomach, but also warmed my heart. Now I want to turn that into hope for others." Emma couldn't hold it in any longer. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She wiped them away and said chokingly, "Thank you. I don't know what to say other than thank you." "That's not all," Richard said, breaking the emotional silence with a smile. He pushed the folder closer to Emma and said, "We have one more thing for you. My father bought this Miller's Diner and wants to give you ownership." Emma was stunned. "This restaurant?" "Yes," Henry nodded. "I know you love this place, and I see how hard you work. You deserve a better future. Miller's Diner is yours from now on." Emma stood still, her heart stopping for a few seconds. She looked around the small diner, the place where she had spent so many years working, where her sweat and laughter had poured in. The thought of this diner now being hers made it all seem like a dream. "But I can't take this, this is too much." Richard smiled, cutting her off. "Emma, you deserve this. This is not a thank you, but a recognition of your sincere heart and kindness. Take it and continue to spread the good word, just like you did for my father." Tears of happiness streamed down Emma's cheeks again. She looked at Henry, at Richard, and then around the familiar little diner, which would now become a symbol of hope and kindness. She thanked them for their gain and collaboration and moved at the Henry. I will do well," she said, her voice trembling but determined. "I will continue to help others, like you did for me today." Henry smiled brightly. "I believe you can do it, Emma, and your foundation will change the lives of many others." Miller's Diner was a warm place. Henry, Richard, and Emma sat down together, planning the charity and the future of the diner. News of this beautiful act and miraculous event quickly spread throughout the town, and then throughout the country. Outside the window, the setting sun slowly sets, bathing the town of Midway in a warm, golden hue. A new beginning is coming, not just for Emma, but for all those touched by the kindness of her heart. News of Emma's small but compassionate act quickly spread across social media and the media. The photo of her placing the meal in front of Henry Hartwell's store promised more revolution and blowback incentives to the culture. Each one became a kind and opaque action, which was recognized by thousands who came to the meal in kindness, became a symbol of kindness in a time of turmoil. Major television networks began covering her story. Journalists flocked to Miller's Diner to interview Emma, but she remained humble, emphasizing, "It's just a meal, I did what anyone would do." That simple answer moved everyone even more. Emma became an inspiration to thousands, reminding them that sometimes just one act of kindness can change a life. Within weeks of the launch of Emma's Heart Foundation, donations poured in from all over the country. Strangers sent letters thanking Emma, telling how her story had inspired them to take action, some delivering food to the homeless, others volunteering at shelters, and even business people donating millions of dollars to the foundation in her name. "Emma's story reminds us how contagious kindness can be," said the TV personality. "Sometimes, just a meal can spark hope that someone has long lost." Miller's Diner has also become famous. No longer a small, forgotten diner, it has become a destination for people who want to meet Emma and share their stories. Emma is not only the owner of the diner, but also the one who connects people with her kindness and sincerity. Henry, now a changed man, has become Emma's companion on this new journey. He regularly appears at charity events and shares his own story of trying to return to life, of learning to walk again, and of trying to build a life that's worth living. "Without Emma, I would still be lost in the dark. She has given me faith in life and humanity." Remember, you never know how far your small kindness can go. Emma kept her promise. As a charity manager and restaurant owner, she worked tirelessly to help those in need. Free meals were given to those in need, and homeless programs were started. Every time she saw someone walk out of the restaurant with a smile on their face, Emma felt like her life had more meaning than ever. "Kindness has no strings attached," she said in an interview. "No matter how much money we have in our pockets, we can still give something, a smile, a greeting, or just sitting and listening to someone in need." Emma's story is more than just a Thanksgiving meal. It's a lesson in kindness, hope, and the ability to change the world with the smallest of actions. People around the world began calling her the girl with the heart of gold. But to Emma, she was just an ordinary person doing the right thing at the right time. Finally, looking back at everything that had changed around her, the restaurant filled with laughter, the charity that gave thousands a chance at life, Emma realized that kindness never goes unnoticed. A meal had started it all. A simple act had worked miracles in a lifetime. Under the warm light of the small restaurant, Henry and Emma sat together, watching the customers enjoying their meals. Henry said softly, "I once lost everything, but thanks to you, I found my family and my purpose in life. You changed my life, Emma." Emma smiled, her eyes shining with happiness. "It's not me, Mr. Henry, it's the power of kindness." And their stories continue to spread, becoming a beacon for those who are lost, proving that kindness can indeed change the world, one little bit at a time. Emma's story and Thanksgiving dinner remind us that kindness, no matter how small, can create unexpected miracles. An act of kindness from the heart can change a person's life and inspire the world. What about you? Perhaps just one act of kindness you do today can bring hope to someone. Thank you for watching Kindness Stories. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel to spread kindness.